Why is doomsday prophecy so evil and we need to guard against it? You ask a very valid question as to why is it such a problem that they're lying about this red heifer being connected to the building of the third temple, being connected to the Antichrist, being connected to the return of this Jesus character, and how if so many people believe it, what's the problem with it? Well, the first thing that we must do is when we look at the history of apocalyptic preaching and what has it done to society and how does it affect people's lives, that's what makes it important. Because we see nothing but destruction, constant and continuous destruction. Although I could give examples that go back centuries upon centuries, oftentimes when we go back and look at what was happening in the 15th century, in the 18th century, or the first or second or third century, we can become detached from those things because we cannot place ourselves there and we cannot see the impact. So relative to how old you are, I will give you examples leading from my lifetime frame all the way up until today. So in my lifetime frame, one of the first things that sticks out in my brain is the false gates. You see, in the false gate situation, you have people believing that behind the Haley-Bot comet, that there was a spaceship and this spaceship was going to come and take these people away because the world was going to end. And we saw a score plus people suicide themselves, believing in this. We saw people leave their families. We saw people give up all their possessions, separate themselves from society. And at the end, they met their end with suicide. We can look at what happened in Waco, Texas with the Branch Davidians. We had people who believed that David Koresh was the return of Jesus. And men gave up their wives because they believed that all the women were the bride of David Koresh since he was the return of Jesus. We saw families broken. We saw children being molested. We saw stockpiling of weapons. And ultimately, we experienced live on TV a house, a construct of burning people inside of a building, destroying not only that building, but the people and the lives inside. And frankly, the reputation of an entire city. Beyond my lifetime, because I want to add this one in, Jim Jones, I don't know exactly when it happened, but it was certainly wasn't happening when I was conscious of what was going on in the world. I was born in 71. But we hear recent tales and we have the colloquialism of drinking the Kool-Aid because Jim Jones was able to convince these people that he was the Messiah. And in convincing them of that, hundreds of people drank poison juice, Kool-Aid, and they all died believing that this was the end. And even in today's time, the right-wing Christian evangelist believes that if America doesn't turn to God in the way that they have framed this God, that it spells gloom and doom for America and for the world. And so they push their anti-gender laws, their anti-racist laws. Well, not anti, they push their gender bias laws, their race laws. They push society, trying to push society back into a time frame of Jim Crow, trying to push society with the mindset that everything in America is white and right, and taking away people's freedoms, deporting people who are American citizens or in the process legally to become American citizens because they speak out against them, bringing on a fascist regime. We see this not so much being pushed by the fullness of the Republican Party, but pushed by the right-wing evangelists who have taken over the Republican Party in the same way that the small number of people in Germany took over an entire country. What we see with the Smithsonian today is the same thing that Himmler did in Germany to change the history to fit a narrative by which they believe in. And if you don't think this sort of thing that happened in Germany can happen in America, you are sorely mistaken. History has a tendency to repeat itself when people sit back. As a man once wrote, when they came for the handicap I said nothing because I was handicapped. When they came for the gypsies, I said nothing because I wasn't a gypsy. When they came for the Jews, I said nothing because I wasn't Jewish. But then when they came for the Protestants, which is what I am, there was no one to stand up for me. So if we don't stand up against these people who are promoting that, oh, the red heifer will be sacrificed and then the third temple will be built. And when it's completed, the Antichrist will set up his throne inside of the temple. And then 2/3 of the population will die because the four angels alongside the Euphrates will be released and kill 2/3 of the population. When they believe that all the waters of the planet will be turned to blood, not turn red as blood, but turn to blood. All these doomsday predictions and them attaching things to the dryness of the Euphrates River right now, which we can easily scientifically see why it is drying. But the river has to completely dry so that the Antichrist will have a roadway that he and his general and his prophet will stroll down, and frog like demons will pop out of their heads. Until those things, when people believe those things are imminent, that is when people go into hysteria. That is when people sacrifice their families. That's when people are found to be at their weakest moments and can be coerced into child sacrifice, can be coerced into sexual depravity, can be coerced out of their finances, can be coerced out of their household goods. And literally, the worst part, it is when people can be coerced out of living their life and their lives be ended, whether through drinking some poison Kool-Aids or burning up in a building because you believe that the ATF was sent by an antichrist to kill your Messiah. This is the danger of apocalyptic writings. This is the danger that we face. And this is why I speak out against it, because that danger, although I am not in Israel, although I am not attached to the evangelical right wings, I am not attached to any of those things. The more these apocalyptic people take power, the more they can use the military, the government, taxation, police forces, and all other things to encroach upon my life and encroach upon your life. So if you sit down while they take advantage of the immigrants, if you sit down while they genocide the Palestinians, if you sit down while they do things that could start World War III against the Muslim nations, if you sit down, by the time they come after you, there will be no one to stand up for you. And mark my words. If their attempt to build this third temple means destroying or taking the Dome of the Rock, how many innocent lives will be lost in a world war because American soldiers, British soldiers, French soldiers are sent to war against Islamic soldiers, Russian soldiers, Chinese soldiers, and the entire world erupts into war. And we know who fights wars: the poor, the disenfranchised, and the oppressed. Those in power don't fight wars. Their children don't fight wars. So stand up. And that is why I stand up. So always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself because your greatness is non negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.